Today, my only plan was to film a Patreon video, but I am unable to stop thinking about that Taylor Swift article. So this is what we're going to do. There's no script. I am just reading the article, responding to it, giving my own thoughts, because I have a lot of thoughts. You might notice that the surroundings have changed. I'll address that at the end of the video. It's a New York Times article. It's linked below. It's called "Look What We Made Taylor Swift Do." Now, I briefly touched on galas and the Taylor Swift fandom in one of my previous videos, and I specifically hid it in the middle of the video and didn't put any reference to it in the thumbnail because Taylor Swift fans scare me, especially those ones, because they are the most delusional and fanatical, and I mean delusional in its most literal definition there. I'm not using it in a derogatory way. I'm using it in a, this is a delusion, therefore you are delusional way. And it's something that I feel very, very passionately about. It's something that a good portion of the videos on this channel are about, which is unnecessarily speculating about celebrities' personal lives, particularly their sexuality, and feeling entitled to other people's time regardless of whether they know you or not. Those are like some of the biggest themes of this channel. It's this constant balance between celebrities trying to appear personable, trying to appear as if you could be besties, and feeding into that idea so much that people do start to believe the delusion that they are owed these celebrities' time and circumstances and identity, which you're not. You're never owed anybody's time or identity. The right wing will co-opt that idea to be, you don't owe anybody anything, which I think is equally harmful. I think you should give things to your fellow man. I think, if somebody is nice to you, you should be nice back to them. Very basic primary school morality, but it's true. What I mean when I say that they don't owe you anything and that nobody owes you anything is that nobody owes you any modicum if you are not willing to give it back. If you were in the same position as this celebrity being speculated against over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, would you withstand it the same way? How would you deal with it? Would you react in a way that they're reacting? And just understanding and empathizing with other people and their circumstances. It's the same problem that people seem to have with people remaining closeted and storylines of people closeted, where the closeted person is often framed in the wrong and that they're doing something wrong by making another person who is out and happily out go back into the closet. And in some ways I understand that. And in other ways, that person isn't safe to come out of the closet. There's nothing that you can do to change that. That person's material quality of life is different to yours. Somebody who has spent the last 3 or 4 years of my life surrounding myself in K-pop fandom, surrounding myself in BL fandom, both of which are extremely fanatical. I try to avoid K-pop fandom as much as possible. I am a fan of a number of K-pop groups, see my video about it, but I refuse to engage in a lot of the fandom behavior because a lot of it is extremely off-putting to me. A lot of it involves speculating about idols' personal lives, and it's just stuff that makes me incredibly uncomfortable. And the same goes for the BL community. There's a lot of emphasis in the BL community on the shipping of the two actors together and their fan service and like making them kiss at fan meets and things like that. And like they've eased off a bit with that in the last like year or two, but it's still a very prevalent part of the culture and it can make me uncomfortable. Now, those actors signed up for that. They signed contracts that say they are locked in to do fan service, things like that. They sign contracts that tell them they are not allowed to publicly date anybody as long as they are an idol. Are these contracts ethical? I don't know. That's not what we're arguing. At the very least, they know what they're getting into before they get into it. Now, do some of these K-pop idols sign these contracts at the age of 13 and that feels very unacceptable to me? Yes, absolutely, but that's not what we're talking about. Taylor Swift did not sign a contract to be like, I am okay with people speculating about my personal life. And you can argue that any celebrity is signing that kind of, imaginary contract that people are allowed to speculate about their personal lives. But I would argue back that she gives you a window into her personal life. She sings songs about most of the men she's dated, and you can pick them out one by one. We know which ones are about Jake Gyllenhaal. We know which ones are about fucking John Mayer. Like, she's not a mysterious person. She's made a documentary or two about her life. It's not an insult to her to say that she's a very surface level person. I mean this in the nicest way possible. She is really direct, and she has tried in the last couple of years to keep more of her personal life back, more of her inner world back from her audience, which is a perfectly respectable thing to do. But she's a fairly open book in terms of her public persona and her public relationships with both friends and people she's dating. And yet, people who will call themselves her fans will spend hours of their life, days, weeks, months, years, speculating that she is secretly queer, that she's dropping hints to them that she's secretly gay and has been the whole time. They use evidence like lyrics of songs, photos, moments in time, and they'll justify this by saying that like Taylor Swift loves to hide things in her work. She loves to put little clues and sprinkles as to like when the next album's going to be, when, you know, she's always referencing and leaving clues in a lot of her work, and she encourages her fans to be investigative. But she's also very specific about those kinds of things. So to claim that she is secretly queer, despite her not only saying that she's not, but also expressing numerous times an anxiety and a frustration around her relationships being scrutinized, both in terms of her romantic relationships and how consistently scrutinized they have been, and also in terms of once she stopped spotlighting her romantic partners and decided to spend more time with her female friends instead, the scrutiny she got from that, from all of the people trying to discern whether or not she was secretly queer, she's expressed stress at that before, about how hard that was. I spoke about it in my previous video. It's been stressful for her. So for a New York Times article to come out basically igniting the fire, like validating those galas in a way, and it shouldn't, but like from a accredited news publication, for something like this to come out, that will bolster a lot of those people. This is being reported on by a journalistic institution, so it must be okay, which I find to be so wholly unacceptable. But let's get into it. It's called Look What We Made Taylor Swift Do. It was published on the 4th of January, and it opens like this. This is how it opens. In 2006, the year Taylor Swift released her first single, a closeted country singer named Shelley Wright, then 35, held a 9mm pistol in her mouth. That is the opening line. Now, Shelley Wright, as far as I know, has gone on record basically saying that she hates that she was used. Not just because they're bringing her trauma back, but because public speculation around sexuality was a big part of why she'd had such an issue. I'm only on the first line, so I will keep going. Queer identity was still taboo enough in mainstream America that speaking about her love for another woman would have spelled the end of a country music career. But in suppressing her identity, Ms. Wright had risked her life. In 2010, she came out to the public releasing a confessional memoir, Like Me, in which she wrote that country music was characterized by culturally enforced closeting, where queer stars would be seen as unworthy of investment unless they lied about their lives. Country music, she wrote, is like the military. Don't ask, don't tell. The culture in which Ms. Wright picked up that gun, the same culture in which Ms. Swift first became a star, was stunningly different from today. It's dizzying to think about the strides that have been made in Americans' acceptance of the LGBTQ community over the last decade. Marriage equality, queer themes, dominating teen entertainment, anti-discrimination laws in housing, and for now, in the workplace. But in recent years, a steady drip of now out stars, Cara Delevingne, Colton Haynes, Elliot Page, Kristen Stewart, Raven-Symoné, and Sam Smith, among them, have disclosed that they have been encouraged to suppress their queerness in order to market projects or remain bankable. This is all true. I have done videos on this. The culture of country music hasn't changed so much that homophobia is gone. Just this past summer, Adam Mack, an openly gay country artist, was shamed out of playing at a festival in his hometown because of his sexual orientation. In September, the singer Maren Morris stepped away from country music. She said she did so in part because of the industry's lingering anti-queerness. If country music hasn't changed enough, what's to say that the larger entertainment industry, and by extension our broader culture, has? Periodically, I return to a video recorded by a shaky hand more than a decade ago of Ms. Wright answering questions at a Borders bookstore about her coming out. She likens closeted stardom to a blender, an insane and inhumane heteronormative machine in which queer artists are chewed to bits. It's going to keep going, she says, until someone who has something to lose stands up and just says, I'm gay, somebody big. She continues, we need our heroes. What if someone had already tried at least once to change the culture by becoming such a hero? What if, because our culture had yet to come to terms with homophobia, it wasn't ready for her? And what if that hero's name was Taylor Allison Swift? And what if I jump out this window? I'm trying so hard not to overreact because we haven't even got to the meat of the article yet, but I'm so annoyed. If you notice, my accent's gotten more Australian since the last time you saw me. It's because one of my Australian friends was at mine this weekend, and I spent a lot of time with her, and the accent's come back. So you'll have to just deal with that. In 2019, she was set to release a new album, Lover, the first since she left Big Machine Records, her old Nashville-based label, which she has since said limited her creative freedom. The aesthetic of what would be known as the Lover era emerged as rainbows, butterflies, and pastel shades of blue, pink, and purple, the colours that subtly evoke the bisexual pride flag. On April 26, Lesbian Visibility Day, Ms. Swift released the album's lead single, Me, in which she sings about self-love and self-acceptance. She co-directed a campy music video to accompany it, which she would later describe as depicting everything that makes me, me. It features Ms. Swift dancing at a pride parade, dripping in rainbow paint, and turning down a man's marriage proposal in exchange for a pussycat. I'm going to commit crimes! I'm going to commit crimes! I should turn into Matthew Scott Montgomery.
I know what you did. It makes me sick. Makes me feel sick.
Can I just say, that music video isn't even that campy. Like, just as it does is a very straightforward thing. It's not interesting enough to be campy. It's an incredibly shallow music video and very directed on the surface. And turning down a man's marriage proposal in exchange for a cat is very much what her brand has been in the last few years, since the whole internet got on her so many times about all of her public relationships that she just went, I'm just going to hang out with my cats. It's like a famous thing on the red carpet that she said, where people were like, oh, you bringing home a date tonight from the carpet? And she was like, no, I'm just going to go hang out with my cats.
You're going to walk home with more than maybe just a trophy tonight. I think lots of men.
I'm not going to walk home with any men tonight. I'm going to go hang out with my friends, and then I go home to the cats.
At the end of June, the LGBTQ community would celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. On June 14th, Ms. Swift released a video for her attempt at a pride anthem, You Need to Calm Down. I'm so sorry. The fact that you've put those two things, two sentences apart, the fact that you've conflated those a sentence apart? The 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots. Don't worry, guys. Taylor, hello? In which she and an army of queer celebrities from across generations, the Queer Eye hosts, Ellen DeGeneres, Billy Porter, Haley Kiyoko, to name a few, resist homophobia by living openly. Ms. Swift sings that outrage against queer visibility is a waste of time and energy. Quote, why are you mad when you could be glad? The video ends with a plea. Let's show our pride by demanding that on a national level, our laws truly treat all of our citizens equally. Many in the press and otherwise saw the video as, at best, a misguided attempt at allyship, and at worst, a straight woman co-opting queer aesthetics and narratives to promote a commercial product. Yep. Because that's what it is. She's an ally. She said the word ally herself. Moving on. Then Ms. Swift performed Shake It Off as a surprise patrons at the Stonewall Inn. Rumours that were perhaps a little more than fantasy swirled in the queerer corners of her fandom, stoked by a suggestive post by the fashion designer Christian Siriano. Would Ms. Swift attend New York City's World Pride March on June 30? Would she wear a dress spun from a rainbow? Would she give a speech? If she did, what would she declare about herself? The Sunday of the march, those fantasies stopped. She announced that the music executive Scooter Braun, who she described as an incessant manipulative bully, had purchased her masters, the lucrative original recordings of her work.
Also, something that I didn't address there, but, like, the implication there is that, like, the reason why she didn't actually come out that weekend was because Scooter Braun had, like, usurped her legacy. But surely a commercial genius the way that Taylor Swift clearly is, if you're able to command public consciousness the way that she so clearly can, surely, just from a marketing perspective, if you're secretly queer, if you're closeted in Hollywood, and somebody steals all of your work, that would be one of the best times to come out. Like, so much of what she talks about after the Scooter Braun stuff is her being a woman, and that's why they felt like they could take that away from her, because she's a woman. Do you know what would make Scooter Braun into even more of a villain? If he was stealing from a queer woman. It doesn't make logical sense for this person to imply that the reason why she didn't come out was because her music got stolen. That's the inference they want you to draw from this. That is the only reason why Taylor Swift didn't come out. That's, like, truly incomprehensible logic.
I'm going to skip ahead a bit. It basically talks about her change in aesthetic and identity after she gets away from her old label. It talks about how she starts featuring a lot more LGBT community and activism in her work. When looking back on the artifacts of the months before that album's release, any close reader of Ms. Swift has a choice. We can consider the album's aesthetics and activism as performative allyship, as they were largely considered to be at the time, or we can ask a question knowing full well that we may never learn the answer. What if the Lover era was merely Ms. Swift's attempt to douse her work and herself in rainbows, as so many baby queers feel compelled to do as they come out to the world? Motherfucker. There are numerous reasons why I feel angry about that. Part of the reason why baby queers feel the need to douse themselves in rainbows and scream about it from the rooftops when they first come out as queer. Part of the reason why I did exactly the same thing, where to the point where a lot of my relatives are like, oh my God, are you ever not talking about it, is a part of the coming out process. It is a thing that baby queers do after they have come out, because they found a community that accepts them, basically. It is a way of declaring that people have your back. There is something to fall back on. There are people who will catch you if you fall, and those people are represented by rainbows, by the bi flag, the lesbian flag, the gay flag, the ace flag, the whatever else, right? The reason why so many baby queers become so loudly queer and rainbow, it's a post coming out thing. It's being a part of a community. Dousing yourself in rainbows publicly while not being out publicly either means that she is queer and does not feel ready, does not want to come out. Nope, none of us are entitled to have her come out. Or, far more likely, she wanted an aesthetic change for an entirely new era of music. She aesthetically changes every single album. She has a different... That's the reason why her tour is the Eras Tour, is because it defines entirely different eras depending on the album she has out. Much like a K-pop star in that way. With every K-pop EP, there is an entirely different aesthetic being created. And Taylor Swift has exactly the same ethos. Lover was all pastels. Not just blues and pinks and purples, but oranges and yellows. It was a pastel era. That was the aesthetic she held at the time. And none of that means that she's queer. We can't just point the finger and accuse every celebrity that has used a rainbow of being queer. And to do so is not only pointless, but could be dangerous. Because we're essentially trying to out these celebrities, out this woman, for something that she is obviously, if it's true, which it isn't, but if it were true, she is obviously trying to hide, to not say. It's one thing to say that, oh, she's leaving us secret hints. It's entirely another thing to take those hints, and then tell the world about it and be like, see, she's a queer. Get her. And I know that that's not the intention of this author. I know that they don't want people to pile on to Taylor Swift. But as the Golden Globes have shown us, people are disproportionately likely to pile on to women than they are to men in the public eye. It is just a thing that is far more common. Women have to react perfectly every time. As Taylor Swift herself said, men react, women overreact. Like, it's just a very common thing. I'm so angry. And look, I have issues with Taylor Swift, specifically down to her use of the private jets and personal contribution to the climate crisis. But none of my issues with Taylor Swift come down to her participation in the queer community, allyship to the queer community, because whether or not she is secretly queer, and that is why she supports the LGBT community, whether or not she does it because a large portion of her user base is LGBT and it would be stupid not to market to that, or whether she does it out of some kind of like entirely cynical worldview where all she wants is to like get money from that demographic. It's a net positive for one of the world's biggest celebrities to consistently shout out a community of people who, particularly the country she is living in, are demonizing more severely every year. It talks about friendship bracelets that she posted that have the word proud with beads on the color of the bisexual flag, basically saying that this was her secretly trying to come out. Then Vogue released an interview with Ms. Swift that was conducted in early June. When discussing her motivations for releasing You Need to Calm Down, Ms. Swift said, rights are being stripped from basically everyone who isn't a straight, white, cisgender male. She continued, I didn't realize until recently that I could advocate for a community that I'm not a part of. That statement suggests that Ms. Swift did not, in early June, consider herself part of the LGBTQ community. It does not illuminate whether that is because she was a straight cis ally or because she was stuck in the shadowy, solitary recesses of the closet. Okay. On August 22nd, Ms. Swift publicly committed herself to the as-of-then unproven project of re-recording and re-releasing her first 6 albums. The next day, she finally released Lover, which raises more questions than it answers. Why does she have to keep secrets just to keep her muse, as all her fans sing scream on Cruel Summer? About what are the 100 thrown-out speeches I almost said to you in her chronicle of self-doubt, The Archer, if not her identity? No, go... Oh, God. Reading comprehension doesn't exist anymore. I'm gonna make a video on like artist intentions versus the audience responses to them, and how completely stripped of all meaning everything has to become in order for it to exist in the world anymore. People just refuse to see subtext and refuse to understand that sometimes there isn't subtext. Like, the difference between something having subtext and nobody seeing it, and the difference between the subtext not existing, is a fucking chasm the size of the Grand Canyon, and yet people will be conflating that those things as the same on either side of the spectrum, and it drives me crazy. And what could the album's closing words, which come at the conclusion of Daylight, a song about stepping out of a 20-year darkness and choosing to let it go, possibly signal? I want to be defined by the things that I love, not the things I hate, not the things that I'm afraid of, not the things that haunt me in the middle of the night. I just think that you are what you love. That's a fairly vanilla statement. Like, most people in their like late 20s, early 30s have some kind of realization, particularly if you're in circles where there's a lot of activism happening, or there's a lot of, you're in a marginalized group, particularly for women, particularly for queer people, black people, where you realize you've spent far too much of your time occupying yourself with exclusively the things that make you angry. Because the world is full of injustice and everything is making you angry. And you have to sometimes pull back and go, I also need to focus on the things that make me happy and the things that I love, because if I don't, I'm going to lose sight of what's important. Taylor Swift is a celebrity who spent most of her teens and all of her 20s being scrutinized by the general public, in a lot of ways very unfairly. Naturally, that kind of person would become jaded about things. So at the end of this album, once she's, left her old label, to have a thing about wanting to be defined by the things that she loves, I just think that you are what you love. Yeah. The first time I viewed Lover through the prism of queerness, I felt delirious, almost insane. I'm not going to say anything. I kept wondering whether what I was perceiving in her work was truly there, or if it was merely a mirage born of earnest projection. It's the second one. Hope this helps. I'm skipping some of this. You can read it yourself. I'm so sorry. There's a bit in here where she talks about every incarnation the public has largely seen those songs, especially those for which she doesn't directly state her inspiration, as cantos about her most recent heterosexual love, whether that idea is substantiated by the evidence or not. A large portion of her base still relishes debating what might have happened with the gentleman caller who supposedly inspired her latest albums. Feverish discussions of her escapades with the latest, etc., fueled the tabloid press and embarrassingly much of traditional media that caught fans' engagement by relentlessly, unquestioningly chronicling Ms. Swift's love life. Why do you think this article is different from that? I'm actually asking. You talk about people's feverish discussions of her escapades and how that's embarrassing and how relentless it is, relentlessly, unquestioningly chronicling her love life. But you think it's okay to write this article. If the inverse version of you, the mirror world version of you, wrote this article speculating about her heterosexuality and that latest kind of thing, you would deride them for doing that, for speculating, baselessly. But this is okay. Even though the outcome of this is either that you're making speculation about a straight woman who wants to be left alone and wants to hang out with her female friends without having every interaction pored over and criticized, or you're outing a woman who has remained in the closet on purpose. Those are the options. Neither of them makes you look good for doing this. Whatever you make of Ms. Swift's extracurricular activities involving a certain football star, romance for the ages, strategic brand partnership, performance art for entertainment's sake, the public's obsession with the relationship has been attention-grabbing, if not lucrative, for all parties, while reinforcing a story that America has long loved to tell about Ms. Swift and, by extension, itself. Because she hasn't undeniably subverted our culture's traditional expectations, she has managed, in an increasingly fractured cultural environment, to simultaneously capture two dominant cultures, traditional and cosmopolitan. To maintain the stranglehold she has on pop culture, Ms. Swift must continue to tell a story that those audiences expect to consume. She falls in love with a man, or she gets revenge. She fucking hates that people think that that's what her narrative is. Oh my god, she's said so many times that she's tired of people speculating about shit. It doesn't. It's not the point. Sometimes Ms. Swift communicates through explicit sartorial choices. Hair the colours of the bisexual pride flag. Okay, as somebody who constantly covers myself in bisexual pride colours, who had bisexual pride flag hair, who owns a bisexual pride flag, whose clothes are various shades of blue, pink and purple, and who is very proudly bisexual, when I see other people with those three colours, my automatic thought is not that they are bisexual. It just isn't. Because those three colours look good together. You know, on the gradient colour pattern, those colours go together. It goes pink to purple to blue. That's the point. They look nice. And I say this as somebody who is bi and consistently wears bi colours. Most of the reason why I wear blues and purples and pinks isn't because I'm bi. It's because those are the colours that work best with my skin tone. I look good in blue. I look good in pink. It's just a fact about me. I like those colours. I think they're great. So I own a lot of clothes with those colours. Sometimes it's because I want to look explicitly bisexual. But even as a bi person, it isn't always because of that. She frequently depicts herself as trapped in glass closets. Oh, for the love of God. It's not a glass closet. It's not a glass closet. It's a glass box. Fuck me. It's a glass box. That's the whole point. People keep putting her in boxes. That's the whole... During the era storm, Ms. Swift traps her past selves, including those from her lover era, in the glass closet. Yeah, they're in different boxes, because they're the different boxes that society has put her in. Oh my god, please learn basic media comprehension. I'm actually going to lose my mind. She drops hairpins on tour as well, paying tribute to the Serpentine dance of the lesbianized Louis Fuller during the Reputation tour, or referencing The Ladder, one of the earliest lesbian publications in the United States, in her Eras tour visuals. Dropped hairpins also appear in Ms. Swift's songwriting. Sometimes the description of a muse, the subject of her song or whom she sings, seems to fit only a woman, as it does in It's Nice to Have a Friend. Okay, maroon or hits different. Sometimes she suggests a female muse through unfulfilled rhyme schemes, as she does in the very first night when she sings, "Didn't read the note on the Polaroid picture, they don't know how much I miss you. Her instead of that pesky little you would rhyme." Okay, but like, I'm a poet, right? Like, I write poetry. It's very easy to find things that rhyme when you're looking for them. So to not put her was either intentional, because it's not about her, this ain't about her, or it was just like a bad rhyme scheme, you know? Okay, all right. Her songwriting also noticeably alludes to poets whose muses the historical record incorrectly cast as men, Emily Dickinson chief among them, as if to suggest the same fate awaits her art. Stunningly, she even explicitly refers to dropping hairpins not once but twice on 2 separate albums. Yes, because she's a human woman who uses hairpins. In isolation, a single dropped hairpin is perhaps meaningless or accidental, but considered together, they're the unfurling of a ballerina bun after a long performance. Those dropped hairpins began to appear in Ms. Swift's artistry long before queer identity was undeniably marketable to mainstream America. They suggest to queer people that she is one of us. They also suggest that her art may be far more complex than the eclipsing nature of her celebrity may allow, even now. Since at least her Lover era, Ms. Swift has explicitly encouraged her fans to read into the coded messages which she calls Easter eggs she leaves in music videos, social media posts, and interviews with traditional media outlets, but a majority of those fans largely ignore or discount the dropped hairpins that might hint at queer identity. For them, acknowledging even the possibility that Ms. Swift could be queer would irrevocably alter the way they connect with her celebrity, the true product they're consuming. Also, I love this, which she calls Easter eggs in brackets. That's just what Easter eggs are. Like Easter eggs on a DVD or Easter eggs in, like, that's Easter eggs are things that you've hidden in something so that people can go and find them, like Easter egg hunts. It's not that she's not the only person who calls it that. And I don't know if that's what this person meant, but it sounds like that's what this person is saying. That, like, they have never heard anybody else call anything else an Easter egg. I don't know. There is such public devotion to the traditional narrative Ms. Swift embodies because American culture enshrines male power. In her sweeping essay, Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence, the lesbian feminist poet Adrienne Rich identified the way that male power cramps, hinders, or devalues women's creativity. All the sexist undertones with which her work can be discussed, often even by fans, flow from compulsory heterosexuality, or the way patriarchy draws power from the presumption that women naturally desire men. True. That is all true. If there is queerness earnestly implied in Ms. Swift's work, then it's no wonder that it, like so many of the other artists before her, is so often rendered invisible in the public imagination. What are you talking about? There are so many out artists. There are so many. And their work hasn't been devalued or ignored or erased by their being queer. Before this century, absolutely that is true 100,000%. But in the last 10, 15 years, we have out female celebrities. We have out non-binary celebrities. We have out male gay celebrities, queer celebrities, who are making careers while being openly queer. It would not do anything to Taylor Swift or her standing in society to come out now. If anything, it would probably swing the pendulum in the other direction, where right-wing people who are fans of Taylor Swift have to reckon with that. But also, it's none of our business. She can write about women's complexity in her confessional songs, but if she ever chooses not to publicly comply with the dominant culture's fantasy, she will remain uncategorizable and therefore unsellable. Her star, as bright as it is now, would surely dim. Whether she is conscious of it or not, Ms. Swift signals to queer people in the language we use to communicate with one another that she has some affinity for queer identity. There are some queer people who would say that through this sort of signaling she has already come out, at least to us. This makes me so angry. But what about coming out in a language the rest of the public will understand? Like English. The difference between any person coming out and a celebrity doing so is the difference between a toy mallet and a sledgehammer. It's reasonable for celebrities to be reticent. By coming out, they potentially invite death threats, a dogged tabloid press that will track their lovers instead of their beards, the excavation of their past lives, a torrent of public criticism, and the implosion of their careers. In a culture of compulsory heterosexuality, to stop lying by omission or otherwise is to risk everything. If coming out is primarily supposed to be an act of self-actualization, to form our own identities, then we owe one another nothing. Correct. This posture recognizes that the act of coming out implicitly reinforces straight and cis identities as default, which is not worth the reward of outness. Correct. Oh my God. But if coming out is supposed to be a radical act of resistance that seeks to change the way our society imagines people to be, then undeniable visibility is essential to make space for those of that power. In this posture, queer people who can live in aspiration owe those who cannot a real world in which our expansive views of love and gender aren't merely tolerated but celebrated. We have no choice but to actively vocally press against the world we're in until no one is stuck in it. And so just for a little while longer, we need our heroes. Okay. In this posture, queer people who can live in aspiration owe those who cannot a real world. Hey, look at me. No, they don't. No celebrity owes you their coming out. Not a single one. Regardless of how wealthy or auspicious you think their life is. Not a single one of those people owes you shit. I am so serious. It takes neither a genius nor a radical to see queerness implied by Ms. Swift's work. No, it takes an idiot. But figuring out how to talk about it before the star labels herself is another matter. So instead of figuring it out and treading lightly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write an article for the New York Times that just dumps her in it. That's a better way of doing that. Right now, those who do so must inject our perceptions with caveats and doubt or pretend we cannot see it. A lie! Implicitly acquiescing to convention's constraints in the name of solidarity. Lying is familiar to queer people. We teach ourselves to do it from an early age, shrouding our identities from others and ourselves. It's not without good reason. To maintain the safety and sometimes the comfort of the closet, we lie to others, and most crucially, we allow others to believe lies about us, seeing us as something other than ourselves. Lying is doubly familiar to those of us who are women. To reduce friction, so many of us still shrink life to its barest version in the name of honor or safety, rendering our lives incomplete. Our minds lobotomize and our identities unexplored. By maintaining a culture of lying about what we uniquely have the knowledge and experience to see, we commit ourselves to a vow of silence. That vow may protect someone's safety, but when it is applied to works of culture, it stymies our ability to receive art that has the potential to change or disrupt us. I'm sorry. That vow may protect someone's safety, but when it is applied to works of culture, it stymies our ability to receive art that has the potential to change or disrupt us. This sounds like it's conflating Taylor Swift's identity with a work of culture, and that is more important than her safety. I don't think that's what this person means, but that is what that sentence implies. In every case, is the best form of solidarity still silence? I know that discussing the potential of a star's queerness before a formal declaration of identity feels to some too salacious and gossip-fueled to be worthy of discussion. No, it's not that it's too salacious and gossip-fueled, although that is absolutely true of this. It is that it is dangerous and discriminatory. Ugh! You are putting somebody in active danger by making it a matter of public consciousness what their identity is, in a world where said identity is still a dangerous thing to be. For somebody to not come out, they have a reason. Whether that reason is that they don't want the public to know, or whether that reason is that people close to them in their lives would kill them if they knew. And it's not like with BL stars, where Taylor Swift is playing queer people, has signed a contract where she makes out with other women on the daily, and has allowed herself into an environment where people are designed to speculate about her. She has repeatedly, exclusively dated men, and has made a point of talking about how close female friendships and how frustrating it is to have people pour over her life and relationships all of the time, whether that be romantic or platonic. It is incredibly dangerous to argue that somebody is a particular identity without evidence, without them having said so themselves, without them having spoken out, came out first. Okay, all right. I've calmed down a bit now. They might point to the viciousness of the discourse around queerbaiting, in which I have participated, to the harm caused by the tabloid press's dalliances with outing, and most crucially, to the real material sacrifices that queer stars make to come out again and again as reasons to stay silent. I share many of these reservations. Do you? Well, you fucking ignored all of them to publish this article! But the stories that dominate our collective imagination shape what our culture permits artists and their audiences to say and be. Every time an artist signals queerness and that transmission falls on deaf ears, that signal dies. What are you talking about? Recognizing the possibility of queerness while being conscious of the difference between possibility and certainty keeps that signal alive. So whatever you make of Ms. Swift's sexual orientation or gender identity, something that is knowable perhaps only to her, or the exact identity of her muses, something better left a mystery, choosing to acknowledge the sapphic possibility of her work has the potential to cut an audience that is too often constrained by history, expectation, and capital loose from the burdens of our culture.
Now, we don't have time to unpack all of that.
To start, consider what Ms. Swift wrote in the liner notes of her 2017 album Reputation. When this album comes out, gossip blogs will scour the lyrics for the men they can attribute to each song, as if the inspiration for music is as simple and basic as a paternity test. Listen to her. At the very least, resist the urge to assume that when Ms. Swift calls the object of her affection you in a song, she's talking about a man with whom she's been photographed. Just that simple choice opens up a world of Swiftian wordplay. Oh, don't like that sentence. She often plays with pronouns, trading you and him so that only someone looking for a distinction between two characters might find one. Turns of phrase often... Bear in mind, never saying her, but okay. Turns of phrase often contain double or even triple meanings. Her work is a feast laid specifically for the close listener. Choosing to read closely can also train the mind to resist the image of an unmarried woman that compulsory heterosexuality expects, and even if it is only her audience who points at rainbows, reading Ms. Swift's work as queer is still worthwhile, for it undermines the assumption that queer identity impedes pop superstardom, paving the way for an out artist to have the success Ms. Swift has. Lil Nas X is one of the most popular musicians on the planet. His music has over 1 billion listens on Spotify. The man owned the world by releasing one of the most explicitly queer music videos that has ever been released. It is no longer unprofitable to be a queer musician, and it hasn't been for some time. Your initial work right afterwards might take a hit, or it might be the opposite direction. It might become more bolstered by the fact that the queer community has accepted you as their own, because it is a huge portion of the planet. But also, you do not need her work to be queer for you to have queer readings of it. There are so many songs that I listen to, musicians that I listen to, who are straight, who I listen to their music and I identify with it from a queer perspective. That's allowed. That's what art is for. That's what music and lyrics and poetry is for you to develop your own understanding of that thing. I disagree with the idea that there is no incorrect interpretation of art. There are incorrect interpretations of art. Absolutely, people are stupid, like this. But you are allowed to have your own interpretation of something. You are allowed to decide that a couple in a TV show is together, even if they've only had 3 seconds of screen time together. You are allowed to listen to a song that uses no pronouns and make it gay for yourself. That is okay. What you do not get to do is make that the creator's problem, the artist, the writer, the director, whatever else, the actor. You do not get to make your opinion and your interpretation of a piece of art the artist's problem. That is not okay. We live in a world, I've said this before, nothing you make will ever be liked by 100% of people. But 100% of the people who don't like you or the thing you've made have access to you. And that is incredibly damaging. It also means that 100% of the people who have a delusional belief about a celebrity that they have never met nor had personal contact with have access to her through social media, through the New York Times. And I am so worried about what this says about the state of the world and the future of celebrity and how we mitigate more and more of these like QAnon style delusion holes, because it is becoming more and more common for people to just believe things online, and it's really starting to worry me. After all, would it truly be better to wait to talk about any of this for 50, 60, 70 years until she whispers her life story to a biographer, or for a century or more when Miss Swift's grandniece donates her diaries to some academic library for scholars to pore over, to ensure that mea culpas come only when Miss Swift's bones have turned to dust and fragments of her songs float away on memory's summer breeze? Oh, you really thought you did something with that paragraph? You didn't. We do not live in an age where people's queerness needs to be hidden and only discovered in journals years later. And to equate it to that is incredibly offensive to all of those queer women and men and non-binary people, trans people who lived throughout history who did have to keep those things a secret because they would die if they didn't. People in other countries living now who have to. There are no out queer. There are about 5 that I can think off the top of my head. Out queer Korean celebrities. There is one out queer Korean idol. One. And that's his whole thing. He's the gay Korean idol. Like, he's a solo artist. He's on his own. Now, statistically speaking, there are a lot more queer Korean idols than we think there are. And people will loudly speculate about that. But there is a reason that those idols have not come out. Because people react badly enough in Korea when they date people of the opposite sex. If they found out that their idol, their bias was gay, some fans would go ballistic. The government would probably have something to say about it. Public officials would probably have something to say about it because Korea isn't the most accepting place for queer people. There are safety reasons why idols can't come out in Korea. To equate Taylor Swift maybe writing some lyrics that might imply to some people that she's a little bit gay, wearing the colors of the bi flag maybe a little bit sometimes in one era of her music, is the same as those people who have to keep their identity hidden in order to continue on in their life. There is an entitlement in this article that bleeds through in almost every sentence, but that paragraph might be the worst of it. And so I must say as loudly as I can see you, even if I risk foolishness for doing so. I remember the first time I knew I had seen Taylor Allison Swift break free from the trap of stardom. I wasn't sitting in a crowded stadium in the pouring rain or cuddled up in a movie theater with a bag of popcorn. I was watching a grainy, crackling live stream of the Eras Tour captured on a fan's phone. Late at night, the beginning of her acoustic set of surprise songs, this time performed in a yellow dress. She begins playing Hits Different. It's a new song full of puns, double entendres, and wordplay that toys with the glittering identities in which she indulges. She's rushing as if stopping even for a second will cause her to lose her nerve. She stumbles at the bridge, pauses, and starts again. The queen of bridges will not mess this up, not tonight. There it is at the bridge's end. Bet I could still melt your world. Argumentative, antithetical dream girl. An undeniable declaration of love to a woman. As soon as those words leave her lips, she lets out a whoop, pacing around the stage with a grin that cannot be contained. Hey, that's not what that lyric means. She's talking about herself. Anybody who's ever listened to a song or read a poem knows that. I could still melt your world, semicolon, argumentative antithetical dream girl. She's talking about herself. Anyway, for a moment, Miss Swift was out of the woods she had created for herself as a teenager, floating above the trees. The future was within reach. She would and will soon take back the rest of her words, her reputation, her name. Maybe the world would see her, maybe it wouldn't. But on that stage, she found herself. I was there. Through a fuzzy fan cam, I saw it. And somehow, that was everything. There are 322 comments in this article. Swiftie here, Gala theories, as they are called within the community, are an invasion of her privacy and best kept to the gross corners of fanfiction websites, which they largely came from. If she's not straight, which is an assertion I doubt, let her tell people on her own terms. Don't out someone not comfortable to come out of the closet, and don't devote so much time to theorizing about her sexuality. Yes, people can speculate about celebrities, but there is a very real harm that could come out of speculation on someone's sexuality. My fellow Swifties, save the rabid theorizing for reputation Taylor's version. So many of these comments are basically being like, hey, stop it. Hey, leave us alone. Hey, stop it. I think it's very telling when someone decides to impart this identity on a figure who has explicitly stated that they are not part of this community. And that's okay, because we're not in 2006 anymore, and there's so many actual queer artists and bands, Boy Genius, Muna, The Aces, Renee Rapp, etc., that you could idolize and view through this queer lens instead of psychoanalyzing every detail about Taylor's lyrics and music videos. I say this as someone who is the biggest Taylor fan and is also queer. I love a good Easter egg in her work, but speculating about her sexuality is too far. I think this is what part of it, right, is that the queer community for many years, and I've talked about this in the OFMD video, was so deprived of representation that we would look for it everywhere, and it'd be very easy to queerbait us. And we've gotten so used to only getting bad representation that now, even in good representation, if it's not entirely positive, there's sometimes a backlash to that, right? Like the finale of season 2 of Good Omens, Izzy's death in OFMD. The backlash is sometimes disproportionate to the actions of the writers, because the last time that happened to us, it was because the writers didn't care about us, right? In that same way. So a lot of us aren't used to having queer musicians to look up to, but also, even if those musicians exist, you might not necessarily like them, you might not, connect to them in the same way. People are rabid about Taylor Swift. I don't personally understand it. I think she's fine. Like, I think musically, she's fine. Some of her albums I very much feel nostalgic for because they were albums I listened to a lot in high school. I don't listen to as much of her new stuff, but, there are some things I like. A lot of her fans are rabidly connected to her music. So I do understand the urge to read a deeper meaning into it that makes her more like you. Right? Because you are listening to these lyrics and you are feeling understood, you are feeling seen, you are feeling connected to this art, to this person, in a very deep way that only things like music and poetry can really, truly make you, right? So I understand the urge to double down and make that more connected by making her more like you. I understand that urge, but it's not healthy. And you have to be able to acknowledge when your actions are unhealthy for yourself, for the people around you, for the person you are idolizing. I'm in the process of becoming a public figure, which is something that makes me incredibly uncomfortable. I'm a writer. I largely want to be left on my own. I like my friends. I like making my little videos. I like talking about the things I care about. And I'm very, very open about my sexuality. But none of that matters once you become a famous person. A couple months ago, I looked up my name on Reddit, like my YouTube name on Reddit, just for fun, to see if anybody had posted about me yet, to see if I'd become the kind of like public figure, as some of my comments kept calling me, even though I did not feel like one, who people mentioned without having to be prompted by a comment section or whatever else. So I looked up my URL on Reddit, and aside from a couple of people mentioning me in like the H Bomber Guy Reddit for queer creators to look out for, which was lovely, thank you for that, the only time my name had come up was in a Reddit for aromantic people. And it basically said, it was like having a go at me for my Barbie video, saying that I was committing arrow erasure because I went through a whole video talking about how Barbie was asexual without once mentioning that she was aromantic, and that like the worst part of all of it is that I'm asexual and I should know better. And this infuriated me. I didn't respond because I'm an adult, and it had been months since this person had posted that, and it's not fair of me to have a go at this person so many months after the fact, and it would be petty and it would make me look like an asshole. But the reason why it upset me so much was because A, I did call her aromantic in that video, right here.
Oh, she's also aromantic, by the way.
B, I had responded to this person telling them that I had said that they were aromantic in the video, and that I had said that she was aromantic in the pinned comment. And that the reason why I hadn't gone more in about the aromantic aspect of her character was because the video was about the over-sexualization of asexual people and the over-sexualization of women in general. And I was talking mainly about that aspect of things, not about the romantic heteronormative heterotoxicity aspect of things. But this person then was like, oh, well, they then told me that they had said that she was aromantic, which she didn't. I've shown a link and then put a screenshot of me saying something else up there. And it's like, and I can't even find the pinned comment, although that might be a glitch on my end, which it was because the pinned comment exists. And I did say the word aromantic in that video. I put the arrow ace flag up over Barbie. And when you become a public figure, you put yourself in the crosshairs of a lot of people who are that fucking Twitter meme of like when you say, oh, I really like pancakes, and like the first response is somebody saying, so you hate waffles? Those people make up a large portion of people willing to say things on the internet, because stupid people make up a large portion of the people willing to say things on the internet. It's unfortunate, but it's true. And I love my commenters, I love my subscribers, I love my Patreon members. I think you're all excellent, and like for the most part, I have been very, very lucky with my comment section to not have an excess of incredibly negative interactions with people. But I do find it incredibly frustrating that people will make an assumption, decide that it's true without fact checking it, and then tell that assumption to other people as if it is a fact. It is something that I don't think I will ever get used to. It is something that will never not make me angry. It makes me angry when it happens to other creators, artists, writers. It makes me angry when it happens to me. It is something that has been triggering enough in friendships of mine that I have ended those friendships. And to do that to somebody while attempting to out them is reprehensible. Reprehensible. Like I said, I'm publicly out as bi and ace. I joke about, like, you know, people shipping me with my friends, and it doesn't bother me that much. But like, imagine if people just started shipping me with some of the YouTubers that I like, you know, some of the YouTubers that I'm like nominally in the same circles as. Like, I don't really know many YouTubers. Both of us are real people, human people. But because we're public figures, some of that realness vanishes, and people have ideas of us in their heads, assumptions that they decide are true. And then they go, oh, well, they make the same content and they live in the same country, so this must be happening, right? Oh, they're opposite genders and they did a collab together. Jarvis Johnson talks all the time about how frustrating he finds it when he does a collab with a woman, and half his comment section is people being like, oh my God, is this your new girlfriend? And he's like, you know, same with queer creators. Just because we happen to both be queer and in the same room together does not mean that we're tonguing when the camera turns off. It is one of the major large fears I have about this job, much as I love it, much as I want to continue doing it, is the constant aspect of speculation, over speculation, and tearing down of boundaries that can make people unsafe. And like, Taylor Swift doesn't need me to go to bat for her. She's fine. I'd quite like her to use private jets less, but like, she's fine. But this isn't about Taylor Swift. This is about respecting other people, coming at them on their level and treating them like human beings.
Also, like, I'm ace, right? And I have a lot of ace friends, and I have a lot of queer friends, and I have a lot of friends that fall under different labels. And there are friends that I have that I would put under the label of, like, queer platonic. Like, my friend Karin, my friend Lizette, they're people that, like, when we're in a room together, people do assume we're dating, or at least that there's some kind of situationship happening there, right? And, you know, it would be understandable for people to make that assumption, and I've never gotten annoyed at people for making that assumption. I would get annoyed if they asked, I said no, and then they continued to poke at it. Just because my relationship doesn't look the way you expect relationships to look does not mean that I'm wrong, that I'm in denial and actually this is a romantic relationship or whatever else. You know, like, it's a very heterosexual, allosexual way of looking at the world, and coming from somebody who seems to be queer themselves, it just feels really icky and gross.
As I know I've said this in a couple of other videos before, but I need to make it like a permanent part of my channel. Do not make me tap the sign. That is a person. You are communicating with a human person. She isn't some nebulous figure who is trying to emulate queerness so that you can grasp onto it with your superior intellect as somebody who has passed through all the clues. She's just a human person. Most of what she does is fairly straightforward, even the Easter eggs. She's not some criminal mastermind who is masterminding a heist of epic proportions that will eventually result in her throwing out bi confetti and announcing her sexuality. Like, if she is queer and she does eventually come out, it won't be because of people like you. It will be in spite of people like you. I cannot stress this enough. Please, please stop doing this. Do not do it to Taylor Swift. Do not do it to Kit Connor. Do not do it to K-pop stars. stop. You are allowed to quietly speculate about it in your corner. There are K-pop stars that I have quietly speculated about to myself, to my friends. But you do not make that shit public, because the moment you are making it public, you are putting it where that person could see it, and you can not only upset them, but put them in danger. And that is not okay. I am literally begging. Please stop. I didn't mean to talk about this for an hour. I was going to do like a quick 20-minute video about Taylor Swift and then move on, film other stuff. But then I talked for an hour. The psych video is currently being edited. Don't worry, I'm working on it. It's a lot of work. It was a lot of me talking, and it's a lot of clips to edit in between, and it's a lot of checking it constantly to make sure it can get through the copyright system. And it's a lot of work. The reason why I'm back in my room, one of my friends has recently been made homeless, and they didn't have anywhere to go, so I'm currently, they'll be living in the spare room, which means I needed to remove all of my equipment from that room, which is going to make filming for the next couple of months quite difficult. But I think it's just going to mean that I do things in my room again, which is fine. It's just how I started, so I'm okay with that. My friend is doing fine, but yeah, it does mean that like things are going to be a bit different going forward. So that's an adjustment to make. I'm also, as I announced to my Patreons, I'm going to Australia in the summertime to visit my mom. I haven't been back to Australia in 6 years because I can't afford it. I'm very poor. Subscribe to my Patreon. Traveling costs a lot of money, but I haven't hugged my mom in 6 years, so I'd quite like to do that. Which means that for the next couple of months, once the psych video is out, because that's the really big project, I'm going to focus a lot more on like writing and filming, which means I might not necessarily have videos out as fast as I was last year, like every week, 2 weeks. But it does mean that I will continue to be posting videos while I'm in Australia, because I will hopefully have some kind of backlog of like pre-filmed stuff that I can edit and post. Australia's internet connection is fucking dog shit. I mean this truly from the bottom of my heart, absolute dog shit. So uploading stuff takes 400 years, but I will do it for you guys because I love you. Subscribe. But truly, I love this job. Thank you so much for making this my part, like my job. I do still have a day job, and it is hard, and it is like I'm tired all of the time, and I'm still chronically ill, and like things aren't going super well. But like the fact that I have this as a creative outlet, as a way to earn a little bit of extra money, as a way to communicate, truly takes a huge weight off my back. So thank you so much to all of you who subscribed, commented, liked, especially to all of my Patreon who are currently going up here or over here, whichever side I've put it on. Truly thank you all so much. If you want to subscribe to my Patreon, the lowest tier, I mean, you can donate however much money you like. The lowest tier gets you early access to things. The second highest access gives you access to the polls for when I do my Patreon videos as to what sort of thing you would like. Access above, it also gets your name spoken aloud in the credits. And it's so nice being able to have like a direct line of communication with people like that, interested by my opinions and the things I have to say. One of the things that I've started doing is basically a PowerPoint where I talk about one of my favorite shows, which is actually what I sat down to film when I filmed this. And then I had to rant about Taylor Swift for an hour. I'm also hopefully, probably by the end of February, going to have a very, very large video out about everything that I watched in 2023. Because again, I asked you guys a couple months ago on my community tab if you guys would like something like that. And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. But unfortunately, I watched over 200 shows last year. So yeah, that project got bigger than I meant it to. I need to start making like cast and run quiz videos or something where I just like make a video a month being like, here's all the things I watched. But even then, that seems like a lot of work. But anyway, so I've got a bunch of stuff coming up. I've got stuff in the works. Thank you so much for all of your patience over the last like 6 weeks. I understand that like not having a lot of communication from me is probably been a bit frustrating if you're a subscriber, and especially if you're a Patreon. But like there is stuff happening, and because the stuff is happening, I haven't had the energy to do a lot of communication. But don't worry, like the psych video is on the way. There are other videos coming up after it. I have no intentions of slowing down, even if it looks from the outside like I have slowed down. Thank you so much for tuning in all of last year, and hopefully you will continue to tune in this year, regardless of whether or not Taylor Swift is queer. I am. Support me! That was fucking stupid. Anyway, annyeong! Extra special thanks to my Rooftop Dollar Patreons, Cast, Dana Brand, Ace of Lights, Cal Kale, Best Stressed, Sunshine Shay, Deborah Laban, Shimen, Sarah Parker Shemilt, Callum McLeod of Clan McLeod, Whoop Whoops, and Lilac Rose. If you would like to hear your name read out over the credits, consider becoming a Rooftop Dollar. And if you can't afford that but you like my content, please feel free to like and subscribe and comment. big plans this year, so I hope you're all buckled in, ready to go. It's going to be bonkers.